What up, people? I am almost fully recovered from my sickness. I would say I'm probably about like 90% of the way back. Stomach's still not feeling great. I'm a little drained, but much better than I was previously. But enough about me. We've got more card reviews to do today. We've got another 7 on the docket. We're trying to keep afloat, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. Usually, by this time in the expansion, I'm like 27 cards behind, and I have to do like one mega video catching up. I think I'm doing a pretty good job at staying current. I'm never more than like 3 or 4 cards behind, which usually means by the next day when I go to record, I've got another 7-ish ready to go, which is a good thing. So let's get on into it. First up, we've got Modren. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name. He's a 4-cost 4/4 with Breakthrough, and summon. Your opponent summons a Blackwood Hoodlum in each lane. And these are the Blackwood Hoodlums. They're 1-cost 1/1s. With a last gasp, give Modren +2/+2. So this is a little interesting, and there's a couple different ways that you could trigger this pretty easily. In the past, it would have been Fireball, which would have been a 2-card 8 Magicka combo. However, we recently got Fire Breath revealed from this upcoming set, which is a 2-cost, deal 1 damage to everything. So for 2 cards and 6 Magicka, you can make this guy a 4 Magicka 8/7 Breakthrough, which is pretty solid. Or you could just even leave these guys down and just ping them down later, just in case they have removal for your Modren. You don't have to go all in. I think this is a okay card. I think he's interesting, to say the least. I don't know. I think there may be a list that can fit him in that maybe has some AoE. But at the same time, for regular 4 Magicka, like, I'd probably rather just play Reeve and see if that gets removed or not, rather than give my opponent free creatures. That being said, I don't think this card is bad. Just, I think we have better options at the moment. And that's kind of the problem that you can run into when the card pool is as big as our card pool is sometimes you print cards that are fine, but they need to be more than fine to beat out your existing, like, really good cards. And I'm not quite sure that this card can do that. Although there will be times where you play this and you can kill the 2 1/1s rather easily, and then bang, you have this 8/8 on the board that's pretty hard to answer. I don't think that'll be as common, but who knows. Overall, I think this is like a 2.5-star card. Like, it's solid. It's probably good enough. The effect is interesting. I like this effect quite a bit. One thing I did ask, I sent out a question. I'll see if I get a response. I'll update you guys. Whether the Blackwood Hoodlums that get spawned operate kind of like the Dwarven Colossus spheres, where they are linked to the individual creature, or if they will buff any and all Modrens. The reason why I asked that is either your opponent can play one as well, or let's say, for example, you doppelganger your own Modren. If I go wipe all of the Blackwood Hoodlums, will they buff all of my Modrens? I don't know. I sent that question out, and we'll see. And if I get an update, I will let you guys know. But for now, 2.5-star card. I think it's fine, just not good enough to break through some of the current powerful 4-drops we have. Next up, we've got Ultimate Heist. It's a 12-cost action, costs 3 less for each time you've pilfered or drained this turn. Deal damage to your opponent, destroying their front rune. Steal the card from the rune, and if it's a prophecy, you may play it for free. This card is very, very strong. And there's a couple things that I think go with this card. A, regular pilfer decks. They can sometimes run out of steam, and like maybe even getting as far as breaking the final rune, and then your opponent stabilizes, and you just need a way to end the game. This can be an instant win the game button. But there's been a step further that I've been thinking about. I think things like Bandari Opportunist. There's the 1 Magicka 1/1 Khajiit that drains. That gives you 1 Magicka when it drains. Cards like that, with Unrelenting Siege and Unicorn, you could potentially just hit face a whole bunch of times and make this cost 0. I think this card can be an amazing finisher in Unrelenting Siege decks, and Unicorn being that kind of oomph that those decks needed in order to get the extra damage in right away. Because one of the problems of Unrelenting Siege decks was you had kind of no answer if your opponent just was ready for your threats, because you couldn't attack right away outside of like Bandari Opportunist. Now, with Ultimate Heist and Unicorn, now you have Unicorn to make your other 1-attack guys attack right away, and now you have that little 1/1 Drain Khajiit that can ramp twice, and then you've got Torval Crook that can ramp twice, and you've got a whole bunch of ways to pilfer to easily hit face 4 times in a turn, and if you can do that a couple times, Ultimate Heist is just game winning at that point. You can just break a rune or two. Like, just going face naturally, you'll break at least probably 2 or 3 runes. And then at that point, Ultimate Heist wins you the game. And play things like Spoils of War. I think Unrelenting Siege is very close to being like a real deck, thanks to Ultimate Heist and Unicorn. And in general, I just think Ultimate Heist is a decent card. You don't have to get it down to 0 to be good. Honestly, even if you swing twice and this costs 6, breaking the front rune for free and stealing the card is probably a fair value. And the fact that front rune means if your opponent has no runes, no matter how much health they have, you win. I think this is a pretty solid card. The only issue is, traditionally, a lot of Pilfer decks haven't quite been good enough, but I think this is the kind of card that pushes it hard enough that it could finally be a thing. I think this is like a 4.5 star power level card. The only reason why this card won't see play is if Pilfer decks don't have enough juice to really stick. But like I said, I'm not looking at traditional Pilfer. I think Unicorn Unrelenting Siege is the way to go for this deck. And I'm so excited to give this card a shot. Next up, we've got Fingers of the Mountain. 6 cost action, costs 1 less for each action you've played this turn. And then it deals 1 damage to a creature, deals 2 damage to a creature, deals 3 damage to a creature. So this is a very interesting card. And actually, I think in my custom expansion, I had a card that was like this. I think it was like deal 2 damage to a creature, then deal 4 damage to a creature or something like that. And in my head, it was a way to deal with creatures with Ward, kind of be like a split-up Lightning Bolt. And this card kind of has that same idea. The cost reduction is a bonus. I think 1, 2, 3 damage is not quite worth 6 Magicka, but you'd probably happily pay 6 Magicka for the times where you'll need to hit 3 different creatures for that. And that's the thing that's interesting, is the way this is worded, you can hit the same creature 3 times if you need to take out a 6 health creature, or if they have a 1, 2, 3 health creatures on the board, you can take out 3 separate creatures. This action just has a ton of utility, and the fact that you can reduce it even more by playing other actions makes it even more interesting. I don't think this beats out Ice Storm ever, but you can run this probably as like a 2 copies alongside Ice Storm in certain decks, or maybe if you have a lot of cheap actions, you can run this as like a kind of like how you debilitate cost 7, but you can sometimes count on reducing it to like 6 or 5. You can do the same thing with Fingers of the Mountain, just kind of count on reducing that a little bit. I think this card is quite powerful. Being able to potentially take out 3 creatures with 1 card and not hurt your own creatures, I think is pretty spectacular. I think this is probably like a 3.5, maybe 4-star card, but I'm going to leave it at 3.5 for now, just because it's competing with Ice Storm and Debilitate a bit for that kind of board sweep role. If this was any color other than blue, it would probably jump at least a full star rating, but being in blue means you have to fight with Ice Storm at all times, and I still think this will find a home, but Ice Storm will knock it down a peg. But I still think this card is fantastic. Next up, we've got Dremora Channeler. 3 magic, a 2/2 with Prophecy. You gain health equal to Dremora power. Dremora Channeler's power plus health. I can't remember if we've reviewed this card before, but I think I have not. So it's a 3 magic, a 2/2 that when you summon it, it gains 4 health, which is already pretty solid. The fact that it's a Prophecy makes it even more solid. And the fact that buffs, Divine Fervor, Praetorian Commander make this card crazier and crazier is even more solid. This card is so good, I think it could potentially be even more of an instant win than when your aggro opponent hits a Golden Initiate on a Prophecy. That's how good I think this card is. I think if your opponent is aggro, this card might insta-win the game better than Golden Initiate. That being said, Golden Initiate is probably better in the mid-range matchups, or obviously you feel better about if you need to go face, Golden Initiate does that better. But purely from an aggro opponent attacking your face, I think Dremora Channeler does more right away. And like I said, if you have Divine Fervor, Praetorian Commander, anything that buffs this card, it gets crazier and crazier. But a potential 0 Magicka 2/2, gain 4 health, is very, very solid. I don't think it's going to completely beat out Golden Initiate, just because, like I said, Golden Initiate is probably better in other matchups. But I think Dremora Channeler will find a home. It'll probably be either alongside Initiate or in very certain decks that need to be heavily teched against aggro. Maybe they run them both or just Channeler. But I think Channeler is probably like a 3-ish star card. I think it's very, very good. It could even potentially be higher. I may be underrating it, but I think that some people will just kind of ignore this card because of the stat line, not realizing that it's gained 4 health and not gained 2 health. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good card as well. I just think, again, there's a lot of competition that it needs to break through, and I think people are so accustomed to Golden Initiate being one of the top cards in the game right now that they may just kind of overlook this card. Next up, we've got Invasion Marauder. 3 magic, a 3/3, summon, invade. Now, this card looks kind of meh, but that's also how I feel about that 1 magic, a 1/1 invade. You look at it, it's like, eh, but at the same time, you need these kind of meh invade creatures in order to hit that kind of critical massive invade. Yeah, you don't get super excited about this card, but just the fact that it's a okay statted 3-drop that continues your invade snowball makes this card fairly solid. Again, it's not the kind of card that's going to like instant win you the game, but you need these kind of unspectacular yet solid cards in order to build a deck. If you don't have these kind of quiet, okay cards in your deck, invade doesn't exist because you need to draw perfectly. Now, Invasion Marauder means even if you don't draw perfectly, I still have a okay statted 3-drop to continue that snowball. And I think that's exactly what this is. I think this is a little bit better than the 1-drop just because the body is a little bit better. Yeah, it's not a 4/3 or a 3/4 like you like your 3-drops to be, but we've seen that a 3 magic, a 3/3 with enough utility can survive in this game, and this could potentially be exactly that, and I think yellow-based invade decks will be happy this card exists. I think this is like a solid 3-star card, like it's perfectly fine. You're not going to write home about it, and you won't necessarily point to this card as being the reason why you win games, but it's one of those cards where if it didn't exist, you'd probably lose more games than you think. Again, assuming you go full invade. Next up, we've got Brotherhood Vampire. A 2 magic, a 1/2, with the summon ability, gain +1/+1 for each creature that died this turn. So you need at least 2 creatures to die this turn in order for this card to be worth it. At that point, you would get a 3 magica worth of stat line. It would be a 3/4 at least. How often can you have your 1-drop trade into an opposing 1-drop on turn 2? Not super often, but also not that rare either. My only issue with that being, even if you just trade in your 1, or let's say you favorably trade with their opponent's 1, then this comes down as like a conditional 2/3. And while 2/3 see play, I don't think a 2/3 that sometimes is a 1/2 is something that you're going to happily play, even with the outside chance that you high roll and it comes down as a 3/4 sometimes. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is like a 2-drop that you feel less bad about playing in the mid to late game since you can set up a couple trades, and maybe this comes down as like a 4/5 sometimes. I think that's certainly possible. But it's really going to have to be in like a board-focused mid-range deck where you're making a lot of proactive trades, and this card could be decent in that kind of list. Like, I don't want to completely count this card out. I think it's easy to count this card out because you look at 2 magical 1/2 with a conditional effect that can be silenced, and you're like, that's pretty bad. But it may just be like below average in the early game and like average to above average in the mid to late game for a 2-drop, which if you can get into the late game and not be a liability as a 2-drop, you might be worth it. And that just kind of depends on how board focused the meta is moving forward. If both players, or in general mid-range is popular, and both players are fighting for the board, this card could be pretty solid. And I think it depends entirely on that. So I would give this card probably like a 2.5-star rating. It has the potential to get boosted to a 3-star if we wind up in mid-rangey meta. But like I said, it's just not the kind of 2-drop that you're going to be super excited about. But if you're a quality deck builder and the meta is right, I think this card does have a chance. And finally, last card we're talking about today, we have Mute. 1 Magicka action, silence 2 creatures. So outside of Self-Silence Warrior, I don't see where this card really sees play. Maybe if like Aggro Warrior comes back, a way to get by 2 guards could probably be attempted. But at the same time, if you're playing Aggro Warrior, you're just going to run like Earthbone and Hollow Sharpshooter instead of Mute. So I think Mute really is just like a self-silence tool right now. And it may even have a difficult time breaking into those lists. I don't want to discount the double silence as a thing, because silence is an incredibly powerful thing, and it's an incredibly powerful ability in this game. I just don't think that, like, Hush saw no play as a Prophecy silence one creature, or it saw, like, super rare play. I don't want to say absolutely no play. So Mute loses Prophecy but gains an extra creature. That could be pretty solid. But I look at Mute as like one of those cards where I would be happy to generate it, but not want to play it in my deck, if that makes sense. That being said, I'll probably still try it in Self-Silence Warrior and maybe some other decks, and maybe the card will surprise me, maybe getting by multiple guards, and maybe that's where this card can shine, is we've seen a whole lot of cards in this expansion that either A, the Daedra can give themselves random keywords, or B, we've seen a lot of give your friendly creatures guard. So maybe Mute will come in handy for getting past the multiple guards. That could be a thing in this meta. But we've never seen one of those super guard-heavy decks stick yet, so I can't quite count on it being a thing to give Mute credit for that. So at the moment, I'd probably give it like a 1.5, maybe 2-star rating, but probably like 1.5 stars. And if those super guard decks wind up being a thing, maybe this gets boosted up a little bit. But I just think we have more interesting and more like silence on a body abilities that you want to be playing instead of this right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just the way I feel. But yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Let me know what you guys think of these cards down below in the comments section, what you would rate them, if you guys think I got some wrong, all that jazz. Let me hear it down below. As always, thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.